Welcome to the Cherry Picker, the horror movie podcast where we like to kill people, but not really. I'm your host, Zach Cherry, and with me as always...
Well, that's sucky. Eddie of Edward is Truth.
And today we're talking about Halloween H2O. 20 years later, or as the kids say these days, it's just like, it's H20.
Oh, I don't... The people, come on. Talk to someone who was alive in the 90s.
There's also, it's been called Halloween Water. But...
Oh, well, that's... I'd still take that over Halloween H20, because what is H20? What does that even mean?
I don't know, but for all intents and purposes, this is Halloween 7. Or... Halloween 6 if it's just like Michael Myers specific Halloweens. The whole thing is a clusterfuck. Nobody knows what's going on. Least of all the people who make these movies, I'll tell you that. But this is interesting because I feel like I'm kind of contradicting myself from a few weeks ago, because we did I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, which also I should say Halloween H2O came out in August 5th. 1998. So this is the 25th anniversary, and we were doing the 25th anniversary for I Still Know, but that technically came out in November. And I'm just like, fuck it, it's a summer movie. We do things properly around here, and yet here we are doing Halloween H2O in the middle of summer because that's when it came out. But I mean, there's always a good opportunity to talk about this movie, I feel. So.
Yeah, especially for you. You're quite the fan. I went back and actually re-listened to the Halloween pods that we've done prior to this one, just in preparation, because I was like, I know Zach brought it up, but in which one? You brought it up in all of them. In every Halloween conversation that we had, it always bared repeating the emphasis on your I don't know how much this was a boon to the franchise for you, as far as timelines are concerned. I believe you prefer this timeline?
Well, we can get into all of that, because you might be overestimating my endearment towards this movie. But I think that this is probably, for me, it's still on the plus end of the Halloween movies, because this is a very polarizing franchise, as we've kind of talked about in Halloween 2018 Kills and Hens, when we did those podcasts last year. We're doing these out of order, clearly, which it doesn't even matter at this point, because what is like the Halloween continuity? But I feel like there's a lot to discuss with this one, because there are pros and there are cons, and I'm eager to talk about it with you and everyone after not watching this movie for a while, or at least probably since when did Kills come out? 2021. So it's been like a year and a half, almost 2 years.
God, has it been that long?
Yeah.
Wait. Oh my, you're right.
Hens came out in 2022.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Mind blown. Time is just going by. Anyway.
It's just a concept. Well, what?
Time is the longest distance between two places, though. That's Tennessee Williams, so can't argue with that. What were you going to ask me?
I was going to ask you if you had a premise that you wanted to grace us with.
Yes. Yeah, I have a premise. This one is provided care of simply Will. That's not the name.
Not
simply
Will.
Just
Will Brennan, the guidance counselor.
In quotes, Will. Maybe they just put that in so we'd think it was, but they just dubbed themselves as Will, and I just tacked a little thing at the end like I usually do. So
go for it.
Shall I be a vocal fry New Englander for this one?
Do whatever your heart's content.
I'll try. I didn't rehearse or anything. All right, I got vocal fry. Ooh, I got a good vocal fry going. Yeah, let's do that. All right. On Halloween in 1963, Michael Myers murdered his sister, Judith,
In 1978, he broke out to kill his other sister, Laurie Strode. He killed all of her friends, but she escaped. A few years later, she faked her death so he couldn't find her. But now, in 1998, Michael has returned and found all the papers he needs to find her.
What a sentence.
He tracks her down to a private school where she has gone under a new name with her son, John. And now, Laurie must do what she should have done a long time ago, and finally decided to hunt down the evil one last time this Halloween H2O 20 years later.
Oh, that was painful.
No. All right.
But it's in the bag, so we got to use it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a movie that I fucking loved it when it came out. I remember this because this is very much a Scream Halloween. Like in the sense that it does not feel like a Halloween movie at all. Like it does not have the Halloween atmosphere. The music itself is all literally borrowed from Scream. Like there's certain moments where you can just be listening to it and like, oh, this is where Sydney goes inside and then like Ghostface jumps out of the closet and chases her up the stairs and it's kind of like a mishmash of I think the first two Scream movies and then Mimic or whatever other Dimension properties there were that Marco Beltrami had scored, and we'll get more into the music later. But there's just it really goes for this Scream vibe, which you would think is like palatable, like, and it is for a lot of people. But it's and at the time it was for me. But I mean, like watching it now, it's kind of it's disappointing because it is such a departure from at least the first two movies, because this is really a trilogy capper of 1 and 2, and I'll say trilogy capper for now because Resurrection didn't exist at this point. But it doesn't mesh with them. If that's
it's displaced for sure, because another thing that I got from it, this particular screening, was just the sheer size of the sound. Like it sounds like a room filled with like an orchestra conducting a symphony, or could easily like execute any kind of symphonic melody, and that's not the feel of especially the original Halloween. The original Halloween was largely, it felt like a man in front of a piano with like some electronics at his disposal, and he was making the most that he could out of like these small sounds. But because they were so small, they were so isolating. There was something very austere about the sound.
Betty Davis, less is more.
Yes.
And that really is like kind of the beauty of the Halloween theme music, is that it is very understated. There's not a whole lot to it. It's literally like the same like 3 or 4 keys over and over again, and John Carpenter's even like gone to say it's just like I amazed that like this caught on. Like it was like literally just something that like my father taught me when I was learning like the drums or like the bongos or whatever. He's just like 1, 2, 3, 4, what, like dun, 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 dun. And it really kind of it feels out of place to kind of hit those Marco Beltrami. There's just sort of like the sweeping like violins and just like everything coming at you from all over the
brass,
place.
Like there's a lot of like horns and whatnot, like wind instruments that are like just blaring sounds at us, and it doesn't feel like Halloween. It feels like Scream.
I feel like since we are talking about the music here, we may as well just get that out of the way first, because this was a huge problem during the production, and the whole production of this movie was plagued with tons of different things, but this was one of the bigger ones because they did have a composer, John Ottman, and I guess like they didn't really give him proper notes on like what he was supposed to be doing, or they just kind of gave him the freedom to do whatever he wanted, and he decided that it was going to be kind of like a very Hitchcockian thing, like that he wanted to go for that kind of like music. There's just like there's a lot of suspense, there's a lot of mystery in it, and when the producers like finally heard the tracks, they're just like, no. And I don't. It's funny that they waited till like the very end to listen to like the full recording, and they're just like, this does not sound like Halloween at all. We cannot use this. And the only thing that really that they kept in, which was actually I really enjoy this piece of music, is the Halloween H2O theme song, or like the rendition of the traditional song, which is what plays over like just like the montage of all the things on the postings. And I love the moment, like I just live for like when the beat drops, when it's sort of like the boom, boom. But yeah, other than that, like everything that he did just did not work for I guess the Weinsteins. But I mean, like, yeah, it doesn't seem like they were very communicative with the people that they worked with. Like we talked about this on Cursed, obviously, and Scream 3 and 4 troubled productions. So I'm not surprised that they sent this composer off and just like left him to his own devices to come up with something without really giving him any instruction, and then being like, this is not what we wanted. I'm like, well, maybe be more specific.
Yeah, when you let someone work unchecked like that, you can't really blame anybody but yourself. And if you don't get what you want, there needs to be collaboration and communication, at least 3 steps of the way. But I didn't. The thing about it was I didn't even know who to blame, because you have more of a grasp even just on the making, I think, of this movie than I do, just out of sheer attention paid, because I don't own it on a Blu-ray with like any kind of special features or anything. I don't even own it on a Blu-ray anymore.
I currently have the as I'm holding up here for anyone who's listening, the 4K collector's edition from Scream Factory that came in a box set that had 6 and 8 in it. Like you could not buy this on its own. So I think I have 2 versions of this, because I have the old box set. It's above my head here. But there's other, like I think I have like 5 versions of Halloween 3 at this point. So it's just like, I've got a lot of different versions of these movies. I had to stream it off of Paramount Plus that I bundled with Showtime, because I don't even have my Blu-ray anymore, which was just like a little onesie with the 3 movies, 6 through 8. Yeah, which is a testament to like how little you care about the H2O, I guess, or the franchise in whole.
No, I mean, I sold a bunch of Blu-rays, and I'm still paying things off, so I'll build up another collection at some point. But right now, it's not a priority, especially when I can stream stuff easily for the pod. But and also this isn't one of my faves. I think it's somewhere in the middle for me. If we were to rank, I don't know exactly where, but if we were to rank this franchise, I think there are more offensive entries, and I think there are just more promising entries that I leave, with I don't know, more of a spring in my step.
Well, since you brought it up, do you have a ranking, or at least, I mean, I'll even take like a ranking up until H2O of what you're comfortable.
Let me see.
Do you want? I can go first if
you go first.
Because this has kind of moved down for me. I think at its highest, I've probably had this in 4th place, but it's trickled down there, and currently I have it in 6th. No, wait. So okay, I'm just gonna go through them. Halloween original is first. There's no question about that for me. Second place, and this is controversial, I would go for Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. I think it's an incredible movie. I don't mind like the goofy aspects of it. I think like it's part of what I consider the John Carpenter trilogy of just 1, 2, and 3. And I feel that like the production crew that worked on all 3 of those movies, there's a consistency to the look, the quality, the sound, everything about it. And that movie has really kind of like risen up for me, I should say. Third place, I would go for Halloween 2, which I did have in second place at one time, but it just kind of dropped for me because I feel there are elements to it that don't kind of flow as well as, just coming off of the original. I think it's still a great movie, but it is a little lackluster in places. And then in fourth place, I go for my guilty pleasure, which we've talked about this before. I hate calling something a guilty pleasure, but Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers, because it's such a fucking silly, ridiculous movie, but it's everything to me. So that's fourth place. Fifth place, I say another controversial one, Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, because it's another one that has a absolutely ridiculous, fucking stupid story. I don't watch it for its story. I agree with every criticism about the story. I think it's terrible, but I love the atmosphere in that one. I love the intensity to it. Like, I think that's probably the scariest Michael, at least from what I've seen across the franchise. And then I would say sixth place is H2O. And then from there, I'd probably go Halloween 4, which I really love Halloween 4. I just think that it's kind of vanilla compared to the other Thorn trilogy ones. And then what's that at 7? Then probably I have to watch 2018 again, and we'll get more into that as we go through the podcast here, because there are comparisons that I want to make. So it could be 2018, it could be Halloween Ends. So those two, then Kills, then probably Rob Zombie's 2, original Rob Zombie, and then Resurrection at the very bottom.
Okay.
I think I counted them all. That was 13, I believe.
I had a tentative one that I did originally just for myself, just to make it more fun to binge them.
Yeah.
So I could start with like the worst one, and that way I'd always have something to look forward to next, because it's always going to be a little bit better. Yeah. And I put this does include the entire franchise if you want to hear it.
I do. Everyone wants to know.
All right, at the very, very, very bottom of my list.
So we're going bottom up.
I'm going to go bottom up. From the very bottom of my list, I have Hens. I think it's the worst because even though it is so promising to me in the setup, I think it disappoints me more than anything else as I make my way through it.
Okay.
And then above that, I'd put Resurrection, because at least, I can make fun of it. I don't know. There's still fun to be had. Above that, I'd put Rob Zombie's Halloween, just because, again, opens, strong for me. And then I just feel like I'm getting pummeled. And then above that, Halloween 2, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, just because I think I was a bigger fan of the promise throughout. I could see a lot of potential sprinkled a little bit more, even though it makes less sense than the first one. I just remember there was more nonsense and less pummeling going on for me. Above that, I have Curse of Michael Myers, because I don't share your admiration of the mood. I just kind of, it's fine, like, and then that's all I'll say.
Okay.
Above that, I'll put Halloween H2O, which I think I had more fun this particular screening than I did maybe the last couple. But I don't know if that's going to mean it. You know what? It will rise, because I look here and I have Halloween Kills above it. Let me swap out. Actually, Halloween Kills should be lower than this.
Absolutely.
See, I'm not prepared. Halloween Kills, I don't know where Halloween Kills is going to go. We'll do that one later. But Halloween H2O is above Curse of Michael Myers for sure.
So wait, what placement is this in? Because you've been going backwards, and I'm not that good with math.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Okay.
So 7 is 7.
Yeah, we have them pretty much aligned just in our rankings almost.
Yeah. And then just above that, Halloween 4. Because I'll agree with you. It's fine. And then above that, I have Season of the Witch, which I like a lot, but there are some moments where I dip out. Above that, I have Halloween 2018, because I like it. Mm-hmm. Above that, I have Halloween 5, because I really like that one. And then above that, I have Halloween 2 because the connectivity with the first night, and I can't get over the atmosphere, it feeling like the same night, even though they made it like, you know, a couple years later and everything. There are some things that don't feel like they, you know, like but I don't care. I like watching it. I'd rather live in a world where there's a Halloween 2 than live in one where there isn't. And then above that, I have the original Halloween because Mama. Yeah,
absolutely.
Or Papa, John Carpenter. But so there you go. I'll figure out where Halloween Kills is. That's the one I have to wonder. What do I like less?
Well, that was a very interesting episode when we did that, because we kind of we were like, okay, we don't want to be like completely negative, and I think we started off half of the episode was just like going through the pros. And the
it was more than half. Yeah, we spent a lot of time on the pros.
We did, but it's like the thing is like the pros were just kind of like weak, whereas like the negative points were just like they're very strong, but there was like less of them.
Well, because I also remember saying, I think I even pointed out in the pod, like, the cons for me with Halloween Kills are so overarching. Like they're just they're quintessential problems with, like, you made this choice and that was just the first domino that led you down this path. Whereas the things that I liked, it's like we could spend a lot of time talking about them, but they didn't really affect anything. They were just kind of like, oh, that was a nice moment, you know.
Absolutely.
But that's why that movie is really aging like milk for me.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I feel like it'll come back again, because there's kind of like a key component here with Nurse Marion. If you're just comparing the performances and just like the writing of the character. But I did want to just say that, like, the reason that we had structured that episode that way is because I think that we had kind of come under some scrutiny by some of our listeners. I don't know why we we're that panicked about it, but we're just like, okay, people are thinking that we're being way too negative here, so we have to, probably mostly me, I'm the negative one, I'll take ownership of that, but
I had a lot of negative things to say too.
No.
I knew I was like, we need to point out the positive for sure, just so people who liked it don't feel alienated.
Yeah, we don't want to like turn people off completely. Of
course.
But one of the things I hear when people are kind of like criticize my criticisms of movies are that oh, well, you just like this one because you're nostalgic. Or like people will say that about me in Scream 2, for example. It's just like, they'll be like, Scream 2 is like the worst Scream movie, and you just like it because of nostalgia. Which, I mean, and I've mentioned this before, fuck you if you've ever said that. And
we're not here to diagnose each other. Like, just why don't you ask me why it's my favorite, or my, you know, or whatever, why I like it so much.
Yeah, the reason why I know personally why I don't let nostalgia cloud my judgment is because this is a movie, H2O, that I have a lot of nostalgia for. Like I said before, like I saw this movie back around the time it came out in the summer of 98. And I actually remember I snuck into it with a friend. We did a double feature sneak in. I don't know if there's a term for it, but this was the same summer that There's Something About Mary came out. So we bought we bought tickets for Air Bud, if you remember Air Bud, and
the puppy,
that played basketball. And you know, when the theater people weren't looking, and I feel like people that work in the theater, like back in the 90s, the late 90s, cared so much more than they do now. I apologize to anyone who's listening that might work in a movie theater, but I just like, nobody gives a shit anymore. It's hilarious. But anyway, like, you had to be really like careful to like sneak into things, especially things that were not age appropriate. Like both of these movies, like I wouldn't have been able to go in myself or my friend without parental accompaniment, so that's why we paid for Air Bud and then snuck into There's Something About Mary, and then we basically stole H2O. So I apologize to Dimension Films and everyone involved that I stole this screening of H2O, but I feel like I've more than made up for it with all the purchases I've made of this movie over the years. But
there you go.
I remember
as an adult, when it's age appropriate, you can pay for it. But when you're a kid, you should be stealing it.
Kids can get away with a lot. But I remember that we missed the opening scene because like the timing of the one movie ending and the next one starting. So I came into it with my friend, and it was just we had missed the whole segment with Marion and Joseph Gordon. So it was literally like the two detectives like walking through the house and just being like, Michael Myers, ha, yeah, right. And then the theme song started. So I was none the wiser. And then like at school the next week we were talking about it and my friend was just like, oh yeah, like the nurse, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, that didn't happen. And then that's when I realized, oh shit, I gotta go back and watch it again. So I convinced
and I can't sit in the credits of the first movie that I watched.
Yeah.
You didn't sit through the end credits, did you? Of There's Something About Mary?
Is there something at the end?
No, but I mean, did you? I don't know. I mean, is that why you were late getting into?
No, I'm just saying that the timing, like when Something About Mary ended and H2O started, there was like maybe like a gap of like 5 minutes or whatever. So that's why when we got out, plus we were trying to be stealthy. You know, you go out of one movie and then you sneak into another one. You don't want anyone to see you. But yeah, I had to go back. I convinced my mom. Several weeks later, I think it was like at that point in like the cheap run theaters, like because it was a very small screen that we went to, and I was just like, "Hey, can we see H2O?" And she was like, "Okay, sure." And then we watched it, and then I finally saw like the opening. I'm like, okay, that's what I missed, but I still loved it. Like it was so live for me at the time in 1998. That I was just like, oh, this is like peak Halloween. Like even like 14-year-old, 13-year-old me knew that the original Halloween was superior to this. I still loved H2O so much because at that point I was still kind of catching up on all the movies out of order. So I think that I still hadn't seen Halloween 5 or Halloween Season of the Witch yet at this point. So I had no idea what was going on in the franchise. There were certain no, actually, you know what? I didn't even see Halloween 2 yet because I was confused when Laurie says to John, I watched him burn.
Oh my. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, there's more like Jamie Lee Curtis movies here. So like just to give you an idea of like when I approached this movie, I had no fucking idea what was going on in the franchise.
Or even that, did you know that he was her brother?
I think it's just like it was so like commonly known that Michael Myers is her brother at that point because that's a twist that was revealed in 1981. So I mean like 17 years later, like everyone would just be like, yeah, they're brother and sister. You even go back to the original, and that's the thing. Like, you know, you even get it from like people who are just discovering the Scream franchise for the first time, where they watch those out of order, and they're kind of like picking up little bits of information about like Billy Loomis and you know everything from the past, and kind of like slowly putting it together. And it's not until they finally get the opportunity to watch all of them that they know that. So that was kind of my experience with the Halloween franchise.
Wow. Okay. Because I don't know that I saw it completely in order. Because obviously I saw the first movie. That's a whole story we'll tell when we do that pod. When I was in grade school. I remember I think the next one I saw was Halloween 3. Which I thought was going to be connected, and I was really disappointed when I found out it wasn't. And I thought the first screening I had Halloween 3, I thought it was terrible, and I've really grown to love it over the years for what it is. But I remember seeing like the VHS covers for Halloween 4 and 5 and everything like that. But I something told me like you can't watch those until you see Halloween 2, and Halloween 2 was never at my neighborhood video store, and then I just kind of forgot about it. I just didn't make it a priority, and then somewhere in my early teens or maybe before a teen, maybe like 12 or something, I don't remember. I found out about Halloween 2. I watched it. I didn't have any spoilers, so I had the moment where that Strode girl, that's Michael Myers' sister. And I went, oh, head explosion moment. And I was just like, what? And she's Mrs. Strode isn't your mother. Oh my God, this is insane. So by the time H2O came around, I remember I made it a point to binge everything that preceded it because I needed to be, you know, in the know. I didn't know. It wasn't promoted as an alternate timeline or that it was only following, at least not to my knowledge. None of the stuff from like the expanse of my resources going into movies were just the commercials, the trailers, and maybe Entertainment Weekly or Premiere Magazine, if I was lucky enough to have a piece done, an article written about, the movie that I wanted to see that month or whatever. And this was promoted all over the place, but I don't remember anybody ever saying that it wasn't connected to the entire timeline. So I watched 1, 2, 4. I think I even did watch 3 again, and then 4, 5, 6. And I was just kind of like, what is 7 going to even be now?
Yeah.
So wait, she's still alive? So, well, we thought she died in 4, so I guess she faked her death. And then when she said...
Yeah.
What, yeah.
The thing is that, like, there was a possibility to... I mean, it would have been, like, very convoluted. But I would have loved that. Because, I love continuity. I love, like, connective tissue.
Yeah.
And I think that... I don't know... Like, I do know for a fact that they did say that they were going to, like, just start it all over. I just don't think that it was, like, widely known. Because at that time, like, you got to think, like, 1998... Like, we weren't connected to the World Wide Web. Which is a term that nobody uses anymore, but like we weren't connected to it in a way that
I had a dial-up connection,
to like social media now, where it's just like everything, like because like I feel like that's something that I can say for Blumhouse is that they were very respectful in letting the fandom know that like this is going to be a complete overhaul of the franchise. We're ignoring everything. We're still going to honor it, but it's like as for all intents and purposes, it goes Halloween and then Halloween 2018. And that, I mean, I'm sure that it was like maybe, it turned up in Variety or something like back in the day about H2O, but there wasn't the social media presence for people to know about it. So I only found out about the lack of cohesion more so when I got confused because I'm just like, well, what about Jamie Lloyd? Does she not mourn Jamie? Or even like because there's moments, and they're especially egregious in the next movie, and we'll talk about them there. But like when it's just sort of like, oh well, Michael, killed this person, and then he disappeared for 20 years. And like, no, he didn't. He killed this person. Like there was a whole thing. Right. And then there's even like in the clippings on the wall at the beginning, there's like a pair of scissors, and nobody's been stabbed by scissors in Halloween 1 or 2, or even like when Michael killed Judith. So it's just like, oh, that's Jamie. Or even Rachel in Halloween 5. So I'm just like, it was confusing. And then it kind of took a while. I think once like the internet really started to build up momentum, and there were like little like fan sites and stuff that you could go to that's where like the information was available. I think one of the big ones was like Halloween Movie. It was like one of those, I forget the actual URL, but it was like a whole thing dedicated to the Halloween movies, and I think that's where I kind of like initially became educated on the chronology and timelines of the franchise.
Yeah, and I think I got prompted on it sometime, I forget what year, probably in the early 2000s when I guess like 2004 or so, when it wasn't it there that documentary like Halloween 25 years later or something like that,
right?
And it was just a lot of like cons and a lot of panels and a lot of interviews with people throughout the franchise, and it was kind of like, if I remember correctly, it was, if it wasn't the first of its kind, it was certainly among the first, because I was like, the whole franchise, what? And head explosion again. And I remember seeing a panel where Danielle Harris was talking about H2O coming out, and the fact that Josh Hartnett it was introducing Josh Hartnett, and he became this star overnight, and she was unemployed at the time, and she was trying not to be bitter about it, but and everybody's laughing, like she's saying it with that wonderful kind of like dry wit that she's got, and always has had, as far as I can tell. But that was when I found out, oh, those aren't connected. So I think it took me a few years after the movie was released, after I'd seen it maybe 2 or 3 times, to realize, oh, this isn't connected. Because I was sitting there watching the movie, again, this is how far back my King of Headcanon-ness goes, is that I was sitting there going like, oh, so she must have given up Jamie because she thought she couldn't be a proper mother for her because look at her, she's a mess. So she decided she was going to go off and start over again. But then I guess she met somebody else, and then she had a son, and she decided, I'm going to do it right this time. I'm going to try to raise him, and I'm going to, keep him isolated from that life. So I'm going to change my name, and I'm going to kill off, Laurie Strode, and I'm still not functioning. So I thought that's what happened. So hopefully she'll be reunited with Jamie at some point. I'm thinking it's full on.
Well, I think
full continuity, one timeline.
Yeah, I think the problem is because in the script, well, the thing is with the script is that it was never written to be a return of Laurie Strode. It was just initially started as this concept that was going to take place in a boarding school, and there's even musings of the fact that it was a copycat killer all along or something, which they kind of did bring back in a way, just for the resurrection twist of it all. But
sure,
I know that at a certain point, Jamie Lee became involved with the project because she probably inserted herself into it. She knows how to work the circuit, and she's just like, no, this is my movie now, and it was like, this is what we're gonna do, and it worked. I mean, it because the franchise was gonna go straight to video at that point because The Curse of Michael Myers was a failure for them, so they're like, okay, well, we're just gonna make these cheap straight to video sequels, but her name being attached to it kind of gave it that pedigree to, I guess, hold on to that sort of lifeline. And I mean, once you go straight to video, I don't really think that there's any coming back from that, because I mean, I'm hoping that that's not the case with the Child's Play franchise, because we do know that after Seed, it did go straight to video, and obviously now it's found new life on television, but it would be nice to know that there might be a theatrical future for it at some point. Sure. But certain things, unless even Hellraiser, because I mean, you could say that the reboot that they did of that was a big thing, but it was still streaming only. It's very difficult for any of these horror franchises to get to that point and then come back. So it's almost like Jamie Lee Curtis saved Halloween. That's what she does. She comes in, she does what she has to do. The franchise kind of goes downhill. She comes back, gives it new life, and then she fucks off again, and then it goes downhill, and then she keeps saving it. She's like this sustainable force that's just keeping Halloween and Michael Myers alive.
Until it isn't anymore. I mean, even she couldn't save hens, but
I know. Well, sorry, and I'll circle around to the point I was making, is just that when they had kind of made the script of the idea that it was Laurie Strode living under this fake identity, it was in there that Jamie did exist. She was canon to the story, and there was a scene specifically where a student is giving this presentation on the Haddonfield murders or whatever, and they bring up Jamie and how Jamie died, and then Laurie has to excuse herself out of the classroom and goes into the bathroom and throws up. Because she obviously has this guilt over leaving Jamie behind. But I think the problem really, what I think, or just what I would perceive as why they had to reboot it, is because John and Jamie are the same age. Even if they're a year apart sort of thing, they're the same age. And if Laurie didn't fake her death until a year before Halloween 4, that would mean that both John and Jamie would have been 8 years old, 7 or 8 at the time that happened. So it's almost did she have this Sophie's Choice where she's just I
was just gonna say,
I can only.
God, did she have twins and just go take my daughter and then oh my God, and then carry young John away and raise him and oh my God, and that's why she's so uber protective of him, overly protective, because she couldn't save his. See, that would have been amazing. That's another. Okay, sorry, because this is a huge thing with this movie that is actually kind of developed for me over the years. Yeah. Because, well, first I want to say, because you talked about when you saw it the first time. First time I saw it, I won't linger on it, but I saw it opening weekend. I remember I went to the theater with my sister. We watched it with an opening weekend audience, and opening weekend audience for this movie was off the hook. We were so thirsty for a Halloween movie in the theaters. And when it was happening, it's like, and Jamie Lee's back. Oh my God, we were pumped. And then we started watching it, and the opening sequence was like decent enough that we were like, oh my God. And you could just feel this enthusiasm in the movie theater throughout the entire movie, seriously, until after the Michael, and then we went wild and nuts and roared and everything, and the music is swelling, and she's walking up with the axe saying, Michael, and we are going out of our minds. And then the climax happens, and everyone kind of like, slow to a crawl really, really quickly. And then that stayed for the rest of the movie. And then at the end, when he's kind of reaching for her and she's kind of reaching for him, you can hear people in the audience like, oh, no, oh, come on, because they see her reaching for him, like, don't be an idiot, come on. And it was great, though. Like, I mean, I love a vocal audience. And I remember after it was over, it felt like a roller coaster. Like, we felt gratified and everything like that. Now, that said, as time has gone on, there's something that I think bothered me a little bit that first time I saw the movie, and it kept bothering me more and more as I moved through it. And I think it was the sheer size of the story they were telling. And I don't just mean like production value or anything like that, because I like the look of the movie and the feel of it. It definitely has like a color palette and a style to it that you look at a frame from Halloween H2O, you know that it's from Halloween H2O, or at least, like a teen horror movie from the 90s. But, but the thing about it is, I remember feeling like this tale could be epic. And they played up to the line of epicness. And I never felt like they actually crossed it. They kept kind of like threatening to. Yeah. Like that moment at the nautical window and everything like that, which was in the trailer. It was spoiled for all of us. But I remember even seeing that. And then when we went to go see the movie, same thing. It was like, ah! Everybody's roaring and going insane for that moment because
that was
they're face to face.
That was the moment that kind of got me hooked, because I hadn't even seen any Halloween movies. My only experience with Halloween thus far had probably been seeing it through Scream, like Randy watching it. And I remember seeing the teaser trailer because I actually really connected with this one. And the funny thing is that moment is with the KNB mask, which that's a whole other drama that we'll get into. But it looked very inhuman. Whereas like Michael, like the traditional Michael Myers mask, and even I guess the one that they kind of did ultimately settle on for most of the shots, it still has like human features. You can see his eyes, which is like another huge point of contention. But in that shot, like it was that ugly, smooth, almost like alien like mask. Yeah. But it made blue, like that
almost blue.
That moment that she was like looking at through that porthole window, just because he didn't look human, I was just like, what is this? Like, is this sort of some supernatural thing? I thought she was looking through a mirror, and he was like this like demon that existed on this like in this other dimension. So that was my
in her.
Yeah, well, that was my like first perception of what Halloween was. But the whole thing, the tagline was kind of like, he has pursued her relentlessly for 20 years, which he hasn't. But I mean, like, it was still like, it was a hook. It really like got me. And then that's what kind of got me to, seek out all the other movies and kind of get caught up on it. When that moment did come up in the theater, I was just like, oh my God, it's the moment from the trailer. Because I don't think that's not like a spoiler or like a jump scare in a way. It's just a really like that. Like when you think of H2O, I think that's one of the images that comes to most people's mind because it is such an iconic moment, and this movie is full of iconic moments.
Yeah, but I think ultimately let's just get into it. Okay.
Yeah, let's just get into it 45 minutes into the podcast.
So I'm such a basic, typical podcaster. Yeah. Like we've been talking for 40 minutes, so let's just get right down to it.
You've waited this entire time, now we're going to get into it.
I've waited long enough to share this with you. No, the thing about the epic feel of it and everything, this was the first kind of like threat for me, and I mean threat like in a good way, where the movie's threatening me, but I want it to because it's a horror movie. Like, what are you gonna do to me, movie? And it was when Laurie is teaching the class, And Michelle Williams, I forgot what her character's name is.
Molly Cartwright.
Okay, so Molly is sitting in class in the traditional, like the teen Laurie Strode role and everything like that, because she sees Michael out the window and all that. And she's being taught about something she's barely listening to, but has a very, very firm grasp on. Like, I appreciated that parallel. There's a lot of parallels in this movie. The hook for me was the subject matter, because the original subject matter they were discussing in the first movie was fate and how inescapable it is, and what is the element? Does it Laurie even points out that it was one man thought it was synonymous with religion, and the other one said it was an element like fire, water, or air. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So it's all about fate and questioning, like, what are you destined for, because you're destined to have this night and you don't even know it, even though it's staring you in the face right now. And I always loved that, and I grasped it pretty early on. So I'm watching this movie and I'm hearing them talk about Frankenstein, which I had already read by this point, and hated Victor Frankenstein. So the fact that they're talking about him, I'm like, oh, that shithead, outrunning responsibility and everything. And I start to see them positioning Laurie as the Victor Frankenstein of this particular franchise, or tale. And the monster is Michael Myers. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And we're talking about, like, why did, I think she asks her, like, confronting the monster. And the answer that Molly offers is the reason why Victor finally faced the monster and confronted it was that he had nothing left to lose. He had already lost this and that. And I was like, oh, Laurie's son is going to die. She's going to lose everything. She's going to be completely stripped of all of the comfort. She's not leading a comfortable life, but what little comfort she has, she's going to be stripped of. So she's going to have no other choice but to destroy Michael. Oh, I can't wait to see this unfold. Didn't happen. And what happened felt like small potatoes compared to what I had already built up in my head.
Well, we would have to wait till the ending of Halloween Kills to get that
exactly
storyline in Halloween Ends.
But even that wasn't like that wasn't set up properly as far as I'm concerned either. But,
no,
so even that
all.
wasn't satisfying to me. But the thing was, I felt that's a huge example of kind of everything in this movie, that it's like what they were shooting for and then what was achieved, and how they could have achieved so much more if they would have just shot farther. And they even looked like they were aiming farther sometimes. But it didn't quite pay off for me in the crunch, I didn't leave the theater going, fuck me, that was an experience. I left going, all right, I mean, that's fine, it's fine. But and over the years, I've only been more kind of like endeared by, I'd say, the first 2/3 of this movie for the large part, because I really do enjoy the time we spend with the characters. It's the payoff. It's the third act that suffers the most for me.
Yeah, there's like a huge build up, and it just kind of like it just goes out on a whimper, or just it's very rushed. But okay, so you alluded earlier to, I guess, the old podcasts that we did on the Patreon, because we went through all the movies in succession. It was exhausting, and this is like around the time that like you and I first kind of met each other. And yes, probably every single one of those episodes I just brought up how, because at this point, 2018 had come out, but we hadn't had Kills or Ends, obviously. And I always found an opportunity to just say, like, okay, there's sort of like this tug of war between Halloween H2O and Halloween 2018 for like, which is the better kind of like Laurie, I guess, requel, or just like sort of like the Laurie anniversary movie. And I think that like I always, kind of championed H2O because I think that the story is so much stronger. I think that everything that they're doing with her, just in terms of like how this has affected her life in a way that seemed very realistic, that, wasn't this like huge like thing where they had to like intellectualize Michael Myers and like discuss it in a way like that they do with the Blumhouse trilogy. And I think that one of the components that really connected me to H2O was the relationship between Laurie and John. Because it like they're both terrific in this. I think that they're both like the strongest aspects of it. But then they do this thing where they kind of separate them, and they don't really. I mean, not like that's fine. But John kind of becomes this like non-entity in the movie after like basically the scene where they're looking at each other through the porthole. Like he's kind of taken out of the movie and just sort of like, you know, get out of here. I'm going to do this on my own sort of thing. Where maybe that's the component that was missing, was sort of just like that teamwork of the two of them, or just, you know, something that they you know, it's like kind of like the family aspect of it all could have, like, you know, since this is like her brother. I mean, I don't necessarily know that would work out, but I know that my favorite scene in this movie that is like not actually a horror scene, but it, like, this to me is like, as Jamie Lee Curtis would say, like the trauma of Laurie Strode in her life. But it's just the scene of the two of them when they're in town, and she catches him and Charlie, who's like the fifth Charlie that we've had in this franchise. But she you know, catches them for their little off-campus lunch or whatever, and it's like it's my favorite. Like, just like the dialogue in the scene, like I could recite it. We're just like, what the fuck do you think you're doing? And like, of all the days for you to pull this shit, and it's like, what do you think you could do? Just wander around town? I don't ask you for very much. I just need this one thing, and it's so much drama. Like, I love it, and just living for this moment, and he's giving it back to her just as much as she's giving it to him, and it's like, fuck, like. This is really good. And there's like, you can see people like in the reflection of the glass, they're like crossing the street to avoid them. They're standing right in front of like a store that sells Bibles too. So just like the irony of it all, but it's just like, it's so perfect. And it just like embodies like everything with that character that I feel 2018 and then on needed to take like a full movie to show us through like the most ridiculous, like, oh, I've got these mannequins in my yard and I use them for target practice, and you know, like just all the stupid shit that we would see Laurie doing that was kind of like supposed to visualize her trauma, that felt so like, it felt so spoon-fed to me as an audience watching 2018, where it's like, here it's just like, this is palpable. Like I can feel this tension between these two actors. They've like lived this experience together for so long. Even like the scene at the beginning when they're, you know, having their breakfast, because we do love a good Halloween franchise dysfunctional breakfast.
breakfast.
Every Halloween movie where there's a breakfast scene, there's some sort of dysfunction that happens in it.
Yes.
I love it, and this is such a great one. Like I love the dynamic between the two of them, and I mean, on a personal note, like I had a huge crush on Josh Hartnett when I first, like, I had no idea who he was. This was my first exposure to him, and it's but crazy to think like he was 19 years old playing a 17-year-old when they made this, and it was just like he still like. But she is 30. I mean, I think Jamie Lee Curtis was like 40 when they made this, but like she's playing 37. I'm just like, shit. Like Jamie Lee Curtis is the same age as I am now in this movie. But it's, that aside, like they are kind of like the heart of the movie for me, because I don't feel that we get Michael Myers the same way that we do obviously get Michael Myers in the new movie. So actually watching this, I mean, I will attest to the fact that there were certain elements of Halloween 2018 that I kept thinking about. Just watching this last night and just being like, oh, they did that so much better there. And it was mostly, it mostly came down to atmosphere, and it came down to Michael, because there were like just certain aspects and just scenes where I kind of fell out of things. But comparatively, like all the stuff with Laurie and Karen in 2018, I just did not care for. Like they did not do a good job. They even cut very integral scenes, as far as I understand, of the two of them together. That to me is crazy because this is the scene in H2O that I mean, you talk about the classroom scene about the fate and everything. I'm more so connected with the characters and just like this argument that they're having on the street, and we do not get that.
Oh, absolutely.
We do not get that.
No,
at all
absolutely.
In 2018.
Well, that was another thing that I was really grateful for seeing at this time was there was a comment that I made in our Halloween 2018 pod about because you were talking about Laurie's predicament and how much more connected you felt to its depiction in H2O versus this. And I said, but I feel purely aesthetically, that I get more Laurie just from the look, like just the hair and just her physicality. Like I have no problem kind of drawing a line between like who those two people are. That said, again, I think I said in H2O, I feel like I'm just kind of watching Jamie Lee Curtis.
Playing herself.
I want to rescind... Well, not playing herself, because I don't think I ever said that. Yeah. But I want to rescind a portion of that. I think it is purely aesthetically that I'm getting Jamie Lee Curtis, just because she looked the way she did in every other movie that she made in the 90s in this movie.
Yeah.
So that's why she looked like Jamie Lee Curtis, the movie star, and not like this character, Laurie Strode. I understand she's also trying to disguise herself, so hence the darker hair, the shorter hair, and even the more... I mean, she's still dressing semi-conservatively, only now, you know, with a little bit more allure than she had when she was a teen. But the thing that I definitely got, in a very different way, that I'm very grateful for, we have in two manifestations, or two separate timelines, was the moments where I really got Laurie Strode, just her spirit, in a way that I never got in 2018, which is just kind of like the quiet sadness in this movie. One moment in particular, it happens periodically, and it's not necessarily moments where she's saying anything. It's usually the moments where she is receiving, where she's listening, where she's on the more passive end. But I kind of like the quintessential example for me is when she's talking to Norma, Janet Leigh. She says, "Could I be maternal for a moment?" And she starts speaking these words to her. And I'm enchanted because I love Janet Leigh doing anything. I'd watch her wash dishes. But but then it cuts back to a reaction shot from Jamie Lee Curtis, and the performance is effortless. She looks quiet, small, and sad, and I'm like, that's Laurie Strode. That's the girl, Laurie Strode, that I'm looking at, that, you know, just kind of wants things to work out. Why won't things ever work out for me? Kind of, you know, the Laurie Strode that sat in the car with Annie. And she's like, so you do think about things like that, huh, Laurie? And Laurie's just kind of sitting there, you know, and I'm like, oh my God, that's you. That's you. Okay. And I don't remember that ever really coming across in a way that I could articulate to myself. And there are other moments in this movie where that happened, but that was like kind of like the one where I'm like, there you are. Well, so I was really grateful for that. Yeah.
I'm glad you kind of came around to that, because I did kind of mentally clock that comment you made before when you just said like how you thought that Halloween H2O Laurie was basically just Jamie Lee Curtis. Because that would have been my counter argument to that if it came up again, is that she's in hiding. She's pretending to be someone she's not, but her true self is inevitably coming out. And I think that's one of the issues that I take umbrage with in 2018, is that it's this very like embellished, rageful version of Laurie that I don't feel that we earned. Like, we didn't get to experience and see her journey to get to that point. And I think with H2O, I mean, like, not that her character was developed at all in Halloween 2, but I think that just in terms of just what we got, especially in the relationship with John, I get such a lived-in performance out of the two of them that I feel their history over the past 17 years in every scene where they interact with. There's little nuances to their performance. I love when she finally does kind of rescind and just kind of be like, here's your permission slip to Yosemite, and there's this sort of, she's like kind of like go, like she still has this like hesitation, and he turns around and her smile fades and his fades too, because it's just kind of like, you know, like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, I don't know what's going on with this woman, you know. They're
still sharing a pained expression, like it's
like there's just like,
and it feels very human. It feels well, I love that. That's another thing that feels like incredibly accessible. It feels so human for two people to go at it angrily at each other and just kind of like unleash their truth on each other and demand things of each other, like, look at what I'm going through, don't you understand? That's what most arguments, I think, are comprised of. So from just like a very fundamental level, like that's what's the word I'm like immeasurably human to me. But what I think is also very human is the apology without an apology, because Laurie doesn't apologize for any of the stuff she said, but her apology is in the form of like, I'm gonna let you go. And the fact that the letting go doesn't solve any of his problems, and it doesn't solve any of her problems. In fact, now they have like this whole situation that they have to move into, where it's like, God, my mom, I've been fighting with her like forever about like, just letting me go. Now she finally did, and it's the last thing I want her to do. God damn it.
And what's
like, I thought that was going to feel good. I thought that was going to feel better than it did.
And what was beautiful about that, because it then like opened up more conflict, because I mean, he would have been fine if he just went to Yosemite. Like, Michael didn't even know anything about John unless it was like in the file from the beginning. And I don't think he really cared. I mean, depending on like what canon you go by of like what Michael's mission is. Like, did he want to kill his entire family, or did he just want to kill her? But I think that, like, regardless of that, it set up a really good finale where John could have been part of it. And I think that the problem is, and it's funny because we talked about with Halloween Ends how the marketing really showed us one thing and then it was like something different, because another thing that I remember from, I guess, like the main trailer of this movie is that they kind of postured this as a teen movie, where it was like the central focus was the kids, because I think the tagline or the trailer voice said like, this Halloween, these 4 students are about to learn their teacher's terrifying secret. And it's like, okay, that's not what this movie's about at all. Because A, they don't learn the secret. I mean, maybe Molly does, but like one of the students is her son. And I think, and I remember, like, it did build up hype, because I remember when people talked about it, they're just like, yeah, like H2O, Laurie Strode plays this teacher who walks around with an axe. So my perception of it was like, again, like, oh, so Laurie Strode is just like, she's like, has that much PTSD that she just goes to school every day carrying an axe.
That's so stupid.
But I loved it. I mean, it hyped the movie up so much for me. And it's just funny that couldn't have been any further from what we did get. And not that I felt disappointed by that. Because, I mean, I don't think that, like, the teen characters are necessarily bad here. But I feel like they're very much, like, underdeveloped. I think mostly with, like, Molly, like, I don't really understand her purpose in this movie. I can see with the other two, Charlie and, help me out here.
Oh, I wrote down her name.
Jody Lynn. Sarah, yes.
Sarah.
Yeah. Like, we have to have cannon fodder. There has to be, like, the couple who I guess is hooking up, that had to get killed off. And I will say,
the vaudeville couple.
Yeah. Her kill scene, actually, like, that was really well done. I have one complaint about it, and that's just the fact that they cut back to John and Molly when they're like in their little area and just being like, what was that sound or whatever. It's just like, no, don't stop the tension, because that was like a really great scene, like great like effects of just like the torn ligaments of the foot and all that, like disgusting.
Right.
But
yeah.
Go ahead.
Again though, like the kills, like okay, first of all, like the absence of a kill in the public restroom with the mother and the daughter will forever bother me. That's never going down easy. Yeah. And then Charlie's, I remember, because this is the thing, sometimes like as I'm sitting there, like I remember what it was like literally sitting in the theater while it was going on, and they had such a great setup with like Charlie dropping something simple like the corkscrew down the sink and just the POV of the garbage disposal while he's looking down it and going, and then he even turns it on to show us this is what it's going to do if you reach in and it's turned on. And I just remember so many people in the audience cringing and leaning back like, oh, and, you know, like eager anticipation of like what's coming, in a way that I don't really think that moment deserves, but it was fun, so I don't care. Mm-hmm. So I'm just kind of like, yeah, that was great. The problem was we didn't get to see anything. We saw like Michael move into frame, and I remember I went, oh no, it's coming, and nothing came.
Yeah.
Nothing came. It was an off-screen kill, and we get to see Sarah discover him. And so I felt like that was a loss because it wasn't really even like that strong a reveal, him just sitting in the dumbwaiter and everything like that. I'm like, that's what we set up the dumbwaiter for? But then the payoff with the dumbwaiter really for me is like her leg getting caught in it, because even though I am not on the train at that particular moment of the movie, I'm just kind of sitting there watching things, waiting for them to cycle through until I can, you know, like hone in on something that I'm interested in. The interest comes back because I always wince when that dumbwaiter crunches her leg, her ankle, wherever it is located on her lower extremity.
Like just above the boot.
Okay, yeah.
And
it's oof.
Yeah, like I mean, this movie, like I said, story-wise, like much better than Halloween 2018, I believe. Production-wise, 2018 has the win here. And I think, like, even if you look at the kills, I believe, I'm just going by memory, and I know that some of these have been retconned from characters who ended up surviving, but I think that there was 18 kills in 2018, possibly. Could be wrong on that. 6 of them were off-screen. Could be wrong on that number, too. In this movie, we only have 6, and that's not including the decapitation at the end. Half of those kills occur in the first 13 minutes. And again, those are also kind of off screen in a way. I mean, like, I do love the skate, the discovery of the ice skate in his face. The like the throat slash or whatever. I think like it works for that because this is a character that we care about with Mary, and we want her to kind of get away, and just the fact that she was so close to, you know, potentially, you know, that it was upsetting. But the guy, like, just propped up against the door or whatever, like, you know, when she opens it and he falls on her. And I mean, the whole fucking cliche of, like, a body falling on you and then being like, oh, it's too heavy, I can't get up or move. Like, that was pretty lame. And I 100% agree with you. Like, I was actually, like, the scene of the mother-daughter at the rest stop, all I could think of is, why is this scene in the movie if nothing happens to them? Because there's really, they didn't need it. Michael didn't need to change cars. I mean, I guess that they wanted the weird old-timey car that she was driving for that truck to be his thing when he gets up there. But it's just like, why couldn't that have just been the car that he took from Joseph Gordon-Levitt at the beginning? So it's just like, it felt like such an unnecessary scene to just like kind of throw these two characters that we've had no experience with. And it made me think of 2018 and Kills and all that, how those movies, that's what Halloween Kills was essentially, is just introducing us to random strangers and then having Michael kill them. That just like, if Mike, I would have been happier if Michael had killed this poor mother and daughter. Or it didn't even have to be a mother and daughter. It could have just been like two people. Yeah, it could have been like two people like sneaking into the bathroom to have sex or whatever. That could have been their thing. Yeah. But or
they could have been unassuming like teenage babysitters. Like, come on, this is not that hard.
Yeah.
A code to crack, you know.
And it just like, and going back to that, just like it breaks up the momentum for sure, because I think at that point we're really starting to get into the story of just like the setting of everything. Like we see like, okay, they're at a school, she's the headmaster, John's there, he's got friends, we're introduced to them all. Now let's go check to see what's going on on this interstate. And then we do cut back, and she, you know, she's giving her speech to everyone about like the rules, and like, okay, we're back on again. But one thing that I really kind of noticed on this rewatch, and I think maybe that's because I'm so much more cognizant of this now, is that this is a very oddly structured movie in terms of the acts. And I would say that there are only 2 acts in this movie. Like, it does not have a 3-act structure. I mean, you could say that, like, the opening scene is, like, maybe like an act on its own. because then after the credits it goes into this. But I feel like everything that happens from like when Laurie wakes up from her nightmare, probably until the scene of like what you're talking about with Janet Leigh, where she's just like saying goodbye and all the buses go off. That's probably the beginning of Act 2 for me. But that stretch of the movie, because that's when things kind of turn up, and it's almost like non-stop from it kind of builds up, but then once it gets going and Michael kind of reveals himself, it keeps going until the end, other than like the moment where she's about to kill him and LL Cool J stops her, and then there's maybe like the little added ending onto the movie there, with her driving off with the paramedics. But I see that more as like, so the structure of this is like you have an opening scene, and then you have like one big like first act, and then you have like one big last act, but then you have this little capper at the end. And it's like, I don't know if I like it. I mean, I think that like this is a very lean movie. Like it's 86 minutes long, probably 80 or less when you factor out the credits. But it's just like there's just something weird about that to me. Like it doesn't, and that's probably why there's not that kind of like emotional oomph that comes with like the. I mean, it's definitely there when Laurie takes the axe and goes back into the school and yells Michael. But that, I think if this movie had been more cognizant of like structuring itself better, we could have had like a proper first act, proper middle act, and then go into the finale with everything set up to pay it off in a really good way.
And that's one of the things that kind of, I don't know, hurts is a bit intense, but I mean, one of the things that kind of irks to this day for me about this movie, and I think I felt it the first time, but it was the 90s, it was still the era of Phantom Menace, where we were idealistic enough as audiences to go see the thing that we loved so much, and then we saw it and we were like, oh, we've been waiting so long, it's great. And then we go home, and the more we unpack it, the more we rewatch it, the more we start to realize, okay, well, there's things about it. I've actually come a little bit more full circle with Phantom Menace. I don't think it's great, but I think it's better than some of the other installments in the Star Wars franchise. But with this movie, same deal. I don't think it's great, but I think it's better than some of the other installments in the Halloween franchise. And getting better. Like, this was the most fun in a minute that I've had watching it. Maybe it helps with the closure of the most recent trilogy with 2018 and Kills and Hens. Yeah. But knowing where it lands, I'm kind of like, well, now you've not only ruined the third movie, but you've got like retroactively kind of ruined half of the second one for me, and moments in the first one. So thanks.
I also think that this is Jamie Lee Curtis's best performance in the franchise. I think there is a case to be made for the original, but I think that the thing is that it's like we were talking about before, this is a much more evolved version of that character, and it's consistent with her as well. And I think that like the trauma, that she goes through here, like it's just like it was much more conducive to what her acting chops could kind of give forward, whereas like everything with like 2, she's kind of like a non-presence. The new trilogy, like she gets these opportunities to go on these like deliver these monologues and this like rhetoric that doesn't really make sense to anything, but it's just sort of like her being like, yeah, like I've never feel that she's connected to it. Like I think Jamie Lee Curtis is connected to the new Halloween trilogy in a much more like business capacity. Like is just more so like, how can this further my brand and things like that. And her inevitable Oscar win that came from Everything Everywhere All at Once. Like I think that like that was more so her intent, where I think that like the things that she was going through in the late 90s were much different. Like at that period of time, she actually was going through a lot of like drug addiction and alcohol addiction. Right. So there was actually a lot of things in common with Laurie Strode 98 and like the real Jamie Lee Curtis. And I don't know if that like helps or hinders the argument that you made of just like Jamie Lee Curtis like playing like visually, I guess herself, not like actually herself. But
I'm only speaking to the aesthetic.
Yeah, but I
finish
definitely
your point.
feel like just in her performance in H2, I feel that she's more connected to it. I feel she's more passionate about it in a way that's more meaningful to her on an emotional level than it is to any performance that she gives in the new movies, which I feel is like entirely just, more so based on her career.
Okay. I don't know if I agree with that entirely, but what I will speak to in terms of why I agree with points of what you said, I think it's also what the scenes are comprised of, particularly because, me, I like a lot of 2018, but I think a lot of what she plays in Halloween 2018 is less clear in its direction for what Laurie is doing, or it's crystal clear in its direction, and it's like kind of one thing that you need to play in this scene. You're warning people, you're trying to get there, or you're falling apart and you're doing the whereas I feel like the strength of the writing in Halloween H2O is a lot of disclosure, a lot of like we were talking about with the arguments, a lot of 2 points of view being shared, and they kind of match each other. Particularly the scenes between, maybe that's why we like them so much, the scenes between John and Laurie, because they seem to be playing the same sport in every, like they're playing the same tennis match, or they're playing the same, game of dodgeball at each other, like whatever the sport might be. They're in the same realm with each other, playing by the same rules or eliminating the same rules as they go, and they're very much speaking to each other in a similar tone, having a shared expression of their ideas. Now, what they disclose has to do with what point we are. How much they disclose has to do with what point in the movie that we're at. Like, how much are they willing to share with each other? But because it's so much about communicating but masking things, or tearing the mask off and just shouting and shouting back. I don't think I think it's far more nuanced than that. I think it's about their history, and because they are still living with each other and there is a relationship that's been forged, they're not estranged the way Karen and Laurie were, or even the way Laurie and, I already forgot her name, Allison, the way Laurie and her granddaughter Allison were, because there's a functioning, or as John would call it, a high functioning, because she's an alcoholic, a high functioning rhythm to this relationship, and they've been coexisting in it for such a long time. I feel like that's easier to play, but maybe not easy, more interesting to play. It's just a little bit more it's just more interesting as an audience member to experience too. It's like I can watch them and know, because everything that you said about them and their dynamic is absolutely right. I love and I even love the moments where they're not acting with each other. Like, there's something about like the way Laurie makes her disclosure to Adam Arkin's character, what's his fucking name, Will, the way she's kind of dancing on the nose of the truth. Like, there's a seductive quality to it, but there's also the knowledge that the second she really effectively communicates the reality of her situation to him, they're not getting it on anymore. At least not for until they unpack it and talk about a few more things, and then the mood might be killed, and then they'll have to wait until, maybe the next night or something like that.
Well, I think that,
but
just the fact that you bring up all these characters, because I think that with H2O Laurie, she's surrounded by like all these different men in her life. She's obviously got Michael, her brother. She's got John, her son. She's got Will, her coworker / boyfriend. And she isn't defined by any single one of them. Like, she's defined by her trauma and her relationships with her son and things like that. But they don't really affect this, like, her in a way that we see in 2018 Laurie, where it's just like she's completely defined by Michael Myers. And the thing that's upsetting about that is, like, Michael Myers is not defined by her. And that's what like those movies do, this whole thing of just like trying to intellectualize who Michael Myers is and what he is and what he means and yada, yada, yada. And I think the fact that Laurie as a character is entirely defined by Michael Myers in the new movies makes her less interesting to me. And, you know, we even see like the first time that we meet Laurie in 2018 is the podcasters come in and they're like expositing her life story to her about her relationship with Karen, and it feels so hollow. I don't like it. I'm so detached from it, and we don't actually get to see the two of them on screen together until like much later on in the movie. And like, all it is just like, mom, I knew this was a bad idea. Or sorry, it's more monotone than that, mom. But
I knew who you were doing.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know who Laurie 2018 is, and I'm not sure just trying to say that this is a detriment of 2018, because I think that really what it boils down to is H2O is Laurie's anniversary film, where 2018 is Michael's anniversary film. And, you know, we definitely see this in the production value, the fact that they put so much care into the attention to detail of the mask and everything about Michael in the newer movies, whereas like here they couldn't even get the mask right, that there's 4 different iterations of it, one of them being CGI, which is like a huge fucking thing that like this movie will never live down. So, and even the actor who's playing Michael, whose name Chris something, I know he played Ghostface in one of the Screams, I think it was Scream 2. He, again, this kind of goes towards like the studio's lack of notes for everyone, because this particular stunt performer decided that he was going to play Michael as if he was sort of a panther. That's what he's described in interviews, that's how he wanted to play him. You know, he has this very like, his movements are very quick and sleek and not like robotic. Like you would see the way that James Jude Courtney plays him, or Nick Castle in the original. Like he just had his own take on it, because it was almost like this project where everyone just kind of came together. And oddly enough, is directed by Steve Miner, who did Friday the 13th Part 2 and Part 3. And I get the sense that everyone here like worked very cohesively together. Like people brought their ideas, and you know, obviously they're very accommodating of those, but at the same time it was like to the movie's detriment, because these ideas were just not what Halloween was. And that's a great example of it, of just how this stunt performer gave his own take on Michael Myers. And it's like, you've already got the mask that doesn't look like him, that's constantly changing because of the reshoots, and he's moving in a way like it's almost more like Ghostface, not like quite as frenetic, but it's more streamlined in a sense. Like there's even like the way that he sits up in certain scenes, like he's like moving his legs at the same time, and it's just like it doesn't work. And this also introduced the Michael like hanging down low from the ceiling door.
God. Jesus.
Yeah.
And again, by that point, like I still feel the thud. Like I love, you know, Laurie running into the school with the axe and screaming Michael and everything like that. And but every time it happens now, it's like my heart sinks a little bit, because I'm like, and the movie's over, because like seeing things like that, seeing him lower himself on the pole and seeing, oh God, that like. I know some people are big fans of like the tabletops, you know, like Laurie being underneath and Michael hunting for her and everything like that. Something about the way it's staged just doesn't have the kind of immediacy for me that puts me in the room and puts me in the experience of it. What can I say?
That scene, actually, I guess the mess hall was initially in the script for Halloween 4. When Jamie goes into the school and she's hiding there, and there was supposed to be a scene in a classroom where she was like hiding under the desks, and Michael was either on top of them or then going down and like flipping them over as she was crawling away.
Oh shit! See, but see, that's again, you put a little girl in a situation like that, and it's a completely different dynamic. Like, I am actually terrified of that kind of a premise, because that seems like a very childlike thing to do. Not like we as adults cannot get boiled down to like our most primal kind of instincts and become children again, like when we're in danger and trying to, like, you know, take cover and survive. But it just wasn't, to see a woman, you know, like screaming her lungs out and be the one to like hit the rock against the little fixture thing to knock the gate out, so there is no exit, only one of us will walk away alive, you know, kind of thing. It's like to immediately see her like in a position that isn't of power. Like, I mean, it's almost immediate. It's kind of, it's not the climax I wanted, and I won't linger on. I don't want to keep saying.
Well, I'll just say that I feel like it earned a climax. The where it got to, like, it definitely earned that, but it did not deliver.
Yes.
Whereas I'd say, like, comparatively to 2018, and I'll try to stop making comparisons to 2018, but I think that the fight between the two of them at the end there, I don't think that was earned in the movie at all at any point, but that had more teeth to it. That definitely, like, if Laurie kind of, you know, came in there with the axe and was screaming Michael, and then it progressed into a scene like we get in 2018 at the end there, that would have been spectacular. And I think the thing is, like, there will never be a perfect, I mean, we have a perfect Halloween movie. It was directed by John Carpenter in 1978. Yeah. There will never be a sequel that is perfect. Like, you could take elements of H2O in 2018 and meld them together, and that, you know, might have been a very good follow-up, but it's just like we don't exist in that world, because we have, you know, this movie from David Gordon Green, who is obviously very much focused on his craft and the production qualities and everything that he wanted to bring to it atmospherically, and especially with John Carpenter's score. But I don't think that he's a good storyteller at all, whether it's like him or like anyone of on his team, like is it Danny McBride or whatever? Like, they cannot write a good Halloween story to save their lives. Whereas this, I mean, because this was an interesting process, because this was, I forget the writer's name, and let me try to look it up here, because Kevin Williamson came in and he did a treatment on it, and that was kind of what ended up being the final product of it. But a lot of people miscredit Kevin Williamson as writing the story, when really he just kind of did little touch-ups to it. So it wasn't really his idea. And actually, to Kevin's detriment, he was the one that kind of came in and suggested the caveat that Michael is not actually killed at the end. And this is like, you know, we'll reveal in the sequel that he switched places with a paramedic. So everyone who's mad about that was Kevin Williamson. Like, that's who you should be pissed off about. And I mean, Mustafa Akkad as well, but I think I should have done more research on this part, because I don't think that Mustafa, like, because he's the one that came in and said, no, absolutely not, you cannot kill Michael. So I think that if he had it his way completely, there wouldn't have been that kind of ending where she lops his head off. Which, I mean, it would be interesting to hear his take on the way that Halloween ends. But it was definitely a case of, like, a lot of cooks in the kitchen who had ownership over the franchise at the time, and I think nobody was more upset by the outcome than Jamie herself, because she, you know, she had this idea in her head that, like, this was going to be a final movie and she was going to finally kill her monster, and you know, it didn't happen for her, and then she had to come back and do the cameo in the next movie, and I think that's why she's more positive to the movies that she's done now, because she finally got to do what she had always set out to do. And I think that she's probably made peace with the fact that, like, they're going to keep making these movies as long as they're successful, but she's at least got to wrap up her story and just no longer be a part of whatever future that they have, because she got to kill Michael.
Or 15, 20 years from now, if she's still around, she'll start bad-mouthing these movies too. But
I mean, it's always a possibility. So
yeah.
I mean,
I did want to. Yeah.
I just wanted to say, like, she definitely badmouths Resurrection, and we'll talk more about that when we do that podcast. But
Yeah.
I with H2O, I think like she looks back on it more like with sorrow. I think that she talks about how it's just like it was made with good intentions, but it just didn't turn out the way that she wanted it to. So I do get the sense that, you know, she really loves this, and there is a commentary. I haven't listened to it recently, but for H2O that she does with Steve Miner, and I'm not sure when it was recorded. Sometime after the movie was made. And she was, you know, even commenting through the movie. She's just like, oh, wow, like, I don't remember this. Like, I'm having a really good time watching this. Like, she was very enthusiastic about it. And this might have been like 10 years removed, 5 or 10 years removed. So I know that she does like H2O. I hope that she can recognize that she did good work in it. But I think it just comes down to the studios. And I think that's why we saw that, you know, she only did these new movies with her executive producer credit, where she was able to, you know, retain more creative control and make sure that things went in a very specific direction. But she's also an actor.
Sure.
She's not a writer. So she's not going to recognize the flaws in the story. At least when you're, you know, because you look at a script on the page, it's not the same as when it's translated onto the screen. So, you know, she might have, you know, if she does have any misgivings about the new movies 10, 20 years from now, I mean, I'm here for the tea, but it'll be interesting to hear what she has to say.
Right. I wanted to, speaking of what she has to say, I want to hear what you have to say, because I had... for the first time, I think I wondered this. And I never wonder things like this, because I'm just kind of like, because we need another movie. Like, that's why this happened. But for the first time, I felt like, oh, is that what they're communicating? Because I'm watching Michael, like, I'm hearing, like, okay, so all those movies that I thought the first time I saw this movie, and I've seen it, you know, a handful of times since then. It's I probably less than a dozen, but just under. But because I thought for the first few screenings that it, you know, it was part of the continuity. I'm like, well, Michael did all those killings and everything like that, so that's what he was doing all those years. And and then now it's just dawning on me, like, well, okay, so if it wasn't doing all of those killings, and it's in one of the exchanges. I forget who she's talking to.
Well, it was either she's talking to
Will. It's John. John says, it's been 20 years. What's he waiting for?
Yeah.
You know? And I'm just like, oh, yeah. It has been 20. And what has Michael been doing this whole time? Has he just been sitting in a room, staring at a wall, not seeing the wall, thinking of tonight? And I'm like, why is the reason? I feel like the movie kind of answered it for me, but I don't know if this was their intent, or if I'm just like connecting two things that are unconnected. But okay, it's supposed to be this huge epiphany, a huge trigger for her while she's making her disclosure to Will about like who she is and who Michael is and everything.
Yeah.
And he asks her, how old were you when all this happened? And she looks at the birthday card and says that it's 17. She's like, 17. And immediately she snaps into action because she's afraid for her son's life.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so is she... is she afraid that Michael's like little inner dinner bell is ringing because offspring that is somehow related to him has just turned 17, so therefore it must be exterminated? Is that what's going on? I couldn't tell.
Yeah. I mean, I think that this is where there's some confusion in the fandom, because I've had people say to me that Judith was 17 when she was killed by Michael, but technically she was actually 15. If you go by the dates. Right. So there's no connection to the age of 17. And clearly, like, Laurie did not just turn 17 in Halloween. I mean, maybe, because like there is in the TV cut, and there's the extra scene where Linda comes over to borrow the blouse that Laurie got for her birthday, which connects back to the line later. So, I mean... Maybe she did just have a birthday, and John, because his birthday was like 2 months before that, because he says, oh, just 2 months late. So I don't think that it's a thing. I mean, as we find out in Resurrection, Michael has been living under his house the entire time. And I know that there's graphic novels that have been made that kind of bridge the gaps, especially like in the H2O timeline. So I think the idea was that Laurie Strode faked her death not soon after the original movie. I think like within like the first year or so.
Okay.
So John wouldn't have been born yet.
Wow.
Which brings up another question, is just like, why even tell John about Michael if he was never around when Laurie was still Laurie? Unless maybe his father did, since he's a chain smoking methadone addict or whatever she says about him.
Right.
But it's, yeah, there are a lot of holes just in any way that you spin it. And I think that might have been, there's no piece to any headcanon that you can pull off of just to try to put any movies together. I do like the idea though that like all the movies do exist in the same timeline, and it's just sort of like Michael, he was tricked. It was almost like Laurie tricked, like she faked her death and moved away and tricked Michael, and it's almost like that would mean that in H2O he finds out that she's alive, and it's like he's pissed off about it. You know, it's just like she tricked me, and now I'm gonna go after her and get her. That's one narrative that you can go with, or you can do the one that you mentioned of just like he's just laying in dormant and just like biding his time until he's ready, kind of like, I guess that's what they were doing with Halloween 2018, of just like, you know, he's just been sleeping, but now it's time to rise up. And
who would be saying that to Michael?
Well, it would be Sherry Moon Zombie, of course.
Or even Donald Pleasance, now that he's passed on. Maybe he's become
just a
Freddy. Rise up, Michael!
Freddy Krueger as taking the form of Donald.
Of Donald oh my gosh, that's too much of a mind fuck.
I think, but yeah, you're not wrong. Like there's a lot of like it's ridiculous to think that like he just one day he decided it's just like, did Laurie really die though? Maybe I should go check on that nurse and see if there's like some files there that tell us. And it's also like it's kind of weird that Dr. Loomis would even have this information on Laurie of just like her whereabouts, because it's just like you don't want to keep that information like he doesn't need to know where she is. Maybe he can have a phone number for her or whatever, but like for that to be laying around, especially if Michael disappeared and was never found. I also think it's almost a continuity error that Donald Pleasance in this timeline, because he would have blown up at the end of H2 or Halloween 2 1981, that he I mean that means in any scenario Dr. Loomis survived, and he was just being taken care of by Marion for this entire time.
That. You're right. He should have been dead. He should have been like long dead.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. But that said, see, this is one of those weird things where it's just about the time that it was released. I remember being in the theater, and the last movie that I saw was Curse of Michael Myers prior to seeing H2O, and I knew that was Donald Pleasance's final screen appearance, certainly as Dr. Loomis. And I remember there was a heavy heart that I walked away from that movie with because of that reason. So seeing just his inclusion in that opening, I was like, oh, like I don't know, it just warms my heart a little bit to see him.
No, absolutely. And the thing is, like, Halloween 6 ends very ambiguously on his fate. That we don't know like what happened to him, sort of thing. So I mean, it does, and that's another thing that like kind of adds to another thing that adds to kind of like the blurred lines of these timelines, of just being like, oh, Loomis passed away a few years ago, just being like, oh, because that's what happened in Halloween 6. But it's just like, but that's not canon to this timeline. So it just brings up a lot of confusion. So it's just like, I guess we just have to accept that Michael just one day decided, I'm going to go check to see if there's, maybe a missing link or something, and maybe he has a psychic connection to Laurie and vice versa, and there's so many. I mean, this franchise has done everything, so it could have been anything. But I'll just circle back around because we mentioned her earlier, but Marion Chambers, like her, I guess her appearance here versus the one in Kills, and we don't really need to go into what happened in Kills because we dealt with that shit. But I love her here. I feel like she's so consistent with the character that we had met in 1 and 2, and I love that she's just this like sassy chain smoking nurse. She has a great line when he says, like, "Did anyone tell you secondhand smoke kills?" And like, yeah, but they're all dead.
Yeah, but they're all dead.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's Marion.
Yeah.
That's the Marion I remember particularly from the first movie. Mm-hmm. She got a little more serious in the second one, but she had, urgency, like something desperate to communicate at that particular time. Mm-hmm. But I even liked, I think you've touched on this before, on and off the pod, even just the way that she kind of like deals with kind of like the most immediate threat, you go over and you go to your house and the doors, house has obviously been broken into. She doesn't just kind of like open the door and go, hello. She knows, shit, I need help. So she goes next door to get some backup from some kids who, if they get killed, then, at least it's not her. And good for her for that.
Yeah.
But, especially because, they're little shits, especially Joseph Gordon-Levitt stealing beers from her and wrecking her kitchen. But, I really appreciated her presence in this. I remember recognizing her and just being kind of like, oh, that's so cool. Yeah. It's again, another warmth to my heart. And even like, with the opening credits, seeing Mustafa Akkad's name, I think I experienced it as kind of like, oh, good, at the time when I was in the theater, because it's like, oh, same producer, and wonderful. But now I look at it and it's like, bygone era.
Yeah, he produced all of them. But I think I was even going to say the Mr. Sandman that kind of, comes in with the cold open there, which I love because that immediately connects it to that. I mean, if we're just going by the continuity of 1, 2, and 7, it's just like, this is it. Mm-hmm. And it really sets the mood as well. However, I kind of, watching it this last time, I was sort of annoyed when it comes up again when Laurie's in her car and she turns it on, after she's had the argument with John. And it's playing and she has this little moment, she just smiles and then she turns it off. And I'm like, what does that even mean? It was a song that played over the opening of a movie. She never heard it. Like, it's just like this weird thing that she's
was non-diegetic.
Yeah,
it wasn't.
She's somehow like connecting it to. And this is like Mr. Sandman is a song that was like it came out and was popular like decades before Halloween. So it was a very weird. Like, it was, even at the time of just having it in Halloween too, it was just like an interesting touch to add in there. So just like to have it, like her turn on the radio and just be like, oh, this brings back memories, but are they good memories? I don't know. I'm gonna turn it off now, and it's just like it's. I don't know. You're completely out. What was the term you used? Diegetic.
What? Diegetic and non-diegetic. Yeah. Diegetic is when diegesis is when the song is playing like in the actual atmosphere that you're filming in, or being sung or played or any and it's non-diegetic when it's the underscoring, when it's people in a room recording it
unless we're mistaken about the finale of Halloween 2 and it was actually the ambulance driver had Mr. Sandman on as that was just like her listening to it as they're driving away.
I actually would have really loved that if we could have just seen, like, in the background, like, a little dial with a hand moving on it, like, before they pull away, and they start playing Mr. Sandman, and she's just like, but, that's not what happened. Anyway, I also appreciated, like, I mean, again, like, that from the get-go, I was like, there are a lot of little things here that I'm really kind of, like, morsels that I'm just, like, kind of glomming onto that are feeding my fandom, and then I'm really, really glad it felt like attention to detail that kind of got unraveled towards the end of the movie. But like, I mean, even just like while Laurie's laying there waking up out of her really strange nightmare, I mean, it seemed like a very avant-garde kind of nightmare because nothing really overtly threatening was happening. I mean, there's a closet and there's a photograph and you're awakened my arm, but I liked that her arm, I don't remember if she had like no sleeves on her shirt, or if the sleeves were just rolled up, but we could see the scar from the knife wound that Michael gave her on her, like right on her bicep. I was like, yes, I forgot about that.
Continuity.
Yeah, and you mentioned, I just wanted to touch on Michelle Williams, because you mentioned not really knowing who Molly is, and I agree. Like, I don't feel like she's very developed, especially considering, you know, she occupies a fair amount of screen time. I'd say it's probably on par with the amount that LL Cool J occupies, but I think we get to know him a lot better because he's a character with dreams and aspirations, and we get to kind of root for him, and we get to learn more about him through his interactions with his girlfriend and stuff. And I appreciated all of that. I loved his presence in this movie. But with the thing about Molly is, even though she doesn't have really sharply defined characteristics, I still do like her, because she seems to, for as passive a character as she is, she seems to kind of like be on the right, I don't know, the right side of history, but I mean, just like on the right side of the argument wherever she is. Like, whenever she poses a question to John, I'm just kind of like, yeah, what about that?
I love how even like deep you're digging into these characters that have nothing.
Well, because I think it's also because, like, it's Michelle Williams, and I know the actress, and I'm watching her, and I'm just kind of like, I do like this character for what she is. Like, I mean, I did appreciate, I wouldn't even be mentioning any of this, really, if when the shit hits the fan, and it's the two of them running from Michael, and she's, like, getting tackled, and he's fighting with Michael, and then he gets thrown down and stabbed, and she picks up that rock and fucking, you know, nails him, and I'm just like, oh, good for you.
She has her moment, like, and the whole thing with the keys, which was very exhilarating. Again, like that, you know, that's when I feel like that things are really picking up. So yeah, I agree. Like, there's that, but she just kind of, again, like they're just kind of pushed to the wayside as soon as they become. It's like no sooner do they really enter the movie as like a Michael Myers movie that they're thrust out of it, and that's where it's just kind of like I question, like, why is Molly here? Like, why did John? I mean, I guess, like, it was necessary because, you know, he had to have something that was kind of pulling him away from his mother. But I mean, I will say, for as like pointless as some of the kids were and the other characters, there's no one that I really dislike. I mean, maybe not that I dislike them, but like the mother and daughter, like they're just like, get them out of here. But it's just like everyone, it doesn't feel like the cast doesn't feel bloated, even though there's all these, like, you know, you have like Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Janet Leigh, LL Cool J, like all these like names, and they're like, each one of them has a very specific credit. It's just like with and featuring and introducing and so
with special guest star, extra special guest star. That would have been hilarious if everyone would have gotten like a little introducing or kind of a little
absolutely
a moniker.
But and even amidst all of them, like nobody felt like they didn't belong there. I'll say. I mean, some of them might have been useless, but everyone felt like they fit, other than the mother and the daughter.
Right. Well, I did wonder, because Third Rock from the Sun was already a thing, right? I don't remember the first year that went up, but Joseph Gordon-Levitt was much younger than he is here when he first started doing that. He was like a kid, right?
I mean, I remember
with still long hair.
Yeah, because he had very long hair in the first couple of seasons, and then season, I don't remember, 3 or 4 or whatever, then he cut it shorter. So this was, I mean, I want to say that show probably debuted in like 1995, 96.
Or so.
Yeah, so if you've never seen that, it's hilarious. John Lithgow. I love that show so much.
Not to be confused with 30 Rock. People oftentimes get those confused. No, this is the one about the aliens. The
Third Rock from the Sun, and because he was just becoming kind of like a bigger name at the time too. Yeah. Because this would have been before...
I wonder if he was supposed to be... No, I was just wondering if he was supposed to be like the Marion Crane or the Casey Becker of the movie. Like, if we were led to believe because he is kind of a recognizable face. Not necessarily a star, but I mean, he was a TV star.
I mean, I think the reason they're doing the whole Scream thing, and even though technically Marion Chambers, the nurse, or Whittingham, as she's called here, for some reason. I guess she got married. Like she's technically the Casey Becker, but I think they realized like, oh well, we need to make it Scream-esque. We have to get like some sort of teen actor in there to appear in the opening scene. So it all kind of worked out. You know, they got to have their cake and eat it too, I guess.
This is also the first time I noticed that Laurie, when she's sending off Molly and John after he gets stabbed and everything like that, before she axes and stuff, she tells them to go down to the Beckers, and I was like, oh, okay, so snake eating its tail, kind of like we're full circle now, because the Beckers live down from the Mackenzies, and that was a reference to Halloween. So now in Halloween H20, we're H20. Listen to me. We're H2O. We're referencing Scream. You know, like that's funny. Outside of like also they're watching Scream too.
Right. Yeah, I was just gonna say, which it just creates this paradox of the universe. I mean, as if the Halloween franchise was not already confusing enough, but now you have characters watching Scream 2. And I've thought two things of that, because the first one was that on the trailer, because Scream 2 came out in 97, H2O 98, on the VHS for Scream 2 at the beginning, there's actually a teaser. I think it might have been that one of just like he has pursued her relentlessly. That trailer appears at the beginning of the VHS for Scream 2. So it's just like, so Molly and Sarah put this on, and they're just like, hey, this is about us. Or it's the meme is just like, is this fucking play about us? And then of course the major one is the fact that Scream 1 has scenes from Halloween in it. So it's just like, why did you do that? Why did you have to break the fabric of existence of these movies? But I mean, I think that was all just Kevin Williamson, just, you know, the Becker reference and putting that in there. And, you know, it might have even been the Weinsteins just being like, we own all these movies, let's just throw them everywhere and promote them. And it is what it is.
Nobody's gonna notice in 100 years.
Nobody's gonna think about it. I mean, but that also just goes to show how much they were paying attention to things, that they just did not care about stuff like that.
How seriously they were taking
imagine,
it, like, or not.
Imagine if like Wes Craven had directed H2O, and then, you know, I actually think that like Steve Miner does a great job. I still prefer Friday the 13th Part 2 over this a lot more. We'll have to see how we feel about Friday the 13th Part 3 when we get to that. But I feel like if Wes Craven, you know, was involved in this at some point, he'd just be like, well, now how does that make any sense? And would get them to take that Scream 2 video out of the movie entirely. Because like he that's the thing I love about Wes Craven, is just like he cares about logic and continuity. And that would have been like a huge red flag for him.
I mean, I could also tell, like, because we were nearing the end at that point where with the Becker reference in this movie, that's why I could also tell I was checking out a bit, because I start to make jokes in my head when I check out, and I just wanted to hear, after she tells them, you know, go down the street to the Beckers, you know, then take care of John, I just wanted to hear Molly say, what, that childless couple? Just because Casey's not around anymore. I mean, dark sense of humor, but it was dark times for me. Because also, there was a moment preceding that where, like, I think she's out, Laurie is in the school outrunning Michael. She hasn't yet told John and Molly to go. And she goes over to the closet they're hiding in, or whatever closed door they're behind, and she, like, knocks on it, and they don't open. She's like, open up, it's me! And I just wanted to hear from inside, what if you're the killer in disguise? You know,
using the voice changer. By the way, we're literally in the Scream 3 mansion, because that's Hillcrest Academy.
Yeah,
they covered up,
which is crazy.
Yeah, they covered up the pool, but I love watching it and just being like, oh, there's where Gail and Jennifer were running through after Angelina was stabbed. Just like, it's just fun to like pinpoint all the little locations. I think it's a great setting, and I love like some of the atmosphere does work. Like I love like the curtains kind of billowing in the wind, and there's even a bit at the beginning when Marion realizes that the threat is still there, because like the back door opens and you just see the leaves in the back. I'm like, oh, at least they're the leaves. Like even if they're fake, like what they did in the original Halloween, they've got that going there.
There was another laugh moment that I appreciated, though. I think you pointed this out to me, and I never noticed it on my own. Yeah. And I don't think I've seen this movie since before I saw Hens, so it's been a minute. But it's just when Laurie's day drinking openly, and she asks the waiter. You pointed this out to me. She asks the waiter for another. Was it Chardonnay that she was drinking? Okay. She asked for another glass of Chardonnay, and the waiter's eyes drop to her still full glass. Yeah. And he waits entirely too long with that silence to let it kind of like sink in. Ma'am, you haven't finished that yet. And it's like, bitch, bring the woman her Chardonnay. Because as a server, number one, you never let your eyes fall on the dish. If somebody's asking for more, you get fucking more, because you know what, number one, it's going to pay off in your tip in theory, like if they think
not if you do that
18%. Shit. Yeah, not if you do that shit. Like I bet she did.
I think that he redeemed himself to her though, because like he was bringing in, she's just like, come on faster, and she's like, okay, great. But no, I love that waiter. He's so sassy, like non-verbally, and then just like the yes ma'am way that he does it, that it's just like, and that's another, like, I said I wasn't gonna do it, but okay, the 2018 comparison of just like seeing like Laurie's alcoholism here, of just kind of like she's keeping it from people, but she's doing it in a way that like it's very desperate. It's like, okay, we gotta hurry because he's gonna be back from the washroom. I just want to get this in here. Whereas like I think in 2018 we see her like drinking from the flask in the car and just having this mental breakdown. And again, it's empty to me. It's like these moments that are just like, they look really flashy, but there's no emotion to it that I'm feeling, and everything I'm getting from Laurie, and the fact that they're adding so much nuance to it with this sassy waiter who's just like, are you sure? I mean, and the thing is, like, that could have been like, oh, are you having another guest joining you or something? Like, but like he knew. Right. She'd probably been in there before. She's probably been on some benders there. And I love the fact that she's literally been drinking this whole night. Like the entire climax of the movie, she's probably drunk. Like she started off her day, who knows what she had with her breakfast. We didn't see what happened after Jean left, but she had 2 glasses of Chardonnay at lunch. She was taking a swig of vodka before Adam Arkin, Will arrived. And then like I love that she kind of manipulated him into, and I guess like making an allowance to bring out the vodka, because she tells him the story, and then she's like, now do you want a drink? So she takes it out, and they're just taking swigs right from the bottle. They're not even pouring it. So she's going back into school. She's a little inebriated. She's got the axe.
Oh yeah.
She probably
just enough, just a little liquid courage.
Yeah, totally.
But I mean, just to close the book on 2018, like, that I respond emotionally to Laurie's breakdown in that particular sequence and the fallout afterwards. So that's all I'll say to that. As far as the way it's depicted here, there is some. It's just depicted in a different way that I appreciate. Like, I like the layering of it as well. I like the fact that not only does she think she's hiding it from people, but she's not hiding it from her son, but she's not even hiding it from her son's friends, because there's that one line where they're talking about like, what are they going to drink, and he's just kind of like, okay, I thought you could just steal from your mom's liquor cabinet or something like that. I don't even remember what the line is, whatever he says, but they allude to, your mom has alcohol, she's got lots, she is openly well stocked, go take some of your mom's, she'll never even miss it, she has so much. So I like that it's also kind of got that small towny Haddonfield, everybody knows everybody's business. Doesn't mean we all go confronting each other about it, but everyone, like including Norma, like she knows that like there's shit's going on with that they're hooking up
with Laurie, And
will.
she even has her moment. She's like, if I could be maternal, like you mentioned. So I think like people are being respectful of her, but it's just like everyone knows. And even like Ronnie, LL Cool J, because he's just like, oh, this woman is fucked. Because he even says like psycho.
I heard that.
Eyes up,
like,
Ronnie.
What? But I know. Yeah, I know. I liked that moment.
That
was another thing. Yeah, there was
psycho.
There was that
references.
moment. But even like just to go back to Laurie's character, and then I want to say something about Norma. But that was another moment I noticed. I think it was the first one I noticed where I was really getting Laurie, a very specific Laurie from this movie. It was when. It wasn't when she was teaching. I think it's when they're all in. I don't know. It's not homeroom because everybody's in the same room, but it looks like chapel or something. Like they're all seated in the same pews or something. All
it's the same. It was the
same
room as the mess hall. They just had the seating in there rather than the tables.
Right.
Yeah.
And she's like making whatever speech she's making. Oh, because she's talking about like what's allowed and what's not allowed.
No musicals, sleeping bags.
Like
and I love how everyone's just like, oh, no sex, no drugs.
Yeah. I know. She says no alcohol and no drugs, and people are groaning, and I'm like, dude, she's a teacher. Don't be a little less obvious about it. But her reaction to it, and because there's a sternness to it, but it's not too rigid, and but there's also a comfort in that. That figure of authority situation. It reminds me of Laurie the babysitter.
Well,
like the way she can be both in charge of you, but also, know what you're up to.
She's a cool headmaster or headmistress. She like she can assert her authority, but I mean like. She could get down with her students, like if the setting was, like give it a few years.
I mean, she does.
Yeah.
In fact, she does.
Yeah. Yeah,
but,
totally.
What are you doing drinking in town during lunch? This is my lunch hour and my time.
This is my town. This is where I get drunk.
For one lunch hour to let me.
And I love that. And like clearly, like she's drank 2 glasses of Chardonnay. It's on her breath. She's getting right up into him. She's like, of all the days for you to pull this shit, like that Chardonnay whiff is like right in his. Like he knows. Like she's been drinking.
I wish there could have been like, I don't know if Jamie would have been like down for this though, but I would have loved a take where she just plays it. Listen to me. I sound like I've been drinking. I haven't, I swear. Yeah. But I'm just getting tired. But I would have loved to take where she is kind of slurring her words and kind of just getting like a little too drunk. Just like, you know what it is. All the days for you is double this shit. What do you think you're gonna do? Just wander around.
I love that you're kind of like you're dipping into Scout Taylor Compton, Laurie, a little.
Give me my prescription. So we got Jamie Lee Curtis doing Scout Taylor Compton's lines. My life would be made. But speaking of franchises, or not franchises crossing over, but at least movie crossovers.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to speak to Norma just for a second because
sure.
Yeah. Janet Leigh's in this movie, and I knew that going in when I saw it in the theater. That was like the one thing I saw, aside from all the trailers and commercials and stuff. I saw like an HBO first look or whatever, and I remember they were talking about her cameo, but they were talking about it like it was much larger, so I was really looking forward to it. I was like, Halloween starring Jamie Lee Curtis and Janet Leigh. I thought it was going to be Janet Leigh's comeback too, Yeah. I didn't realize she's like a footnote, she's in 2 scenes. Yeah. But so at the time when I was sitting there in the theater watching it, I was like, that's it? Janet Leigh's capable of much more than that. Yeah. And it's not until, like, I'd say maybe arguably the last 15 years or so that I've really come to appreciate just what it is in, like, the cinema as, like, a kind of cinematic cornerstone and passing of the torch, as it were. Or even, I like to kind of think of it, I distinctly get this feel at the end. I think it's the last line that Norma says to Laurie as she starts to walk to the NFB 418 vehicle that she drove in Psycho, and she turns around and she was like, "Oh, and happy Halloween." And I was like, oh my god, it's like watching like Mary and Crane kind of wave to Laurie Strode from their respective franchises.
There's
because they're not even sharing the frame at that
Yeah.
point. And I feel like Psycho is waving hi to Halloween at that point. It's really
There's a side story where, Norma takes off and she goes to stay at... She's actually embezzled money from Hillcrest, and she's going to stay at a motel for the night, and she's going to get murdered, but we don't... That's another story. But you know what? You're right, because this is something that like every horror movie does these days, especially when it's pre-existing IP, when they have these little cameos here and there, and it's sort of like a wink at the audience. And I mean, I controversial maybe, but I appreciate Janet Leigh in H2O way more than I appreciate Kirby in Scream 6 or Gale in Scream 6. Like, I did not get anything out of those return of like past characters. Not that like Norma is a past character. Maybe those are bad examples, but just like of someone who's kind of billed as like a big part of the movie who then turns out to be a footnote. So, I do love Janet Leigh in this movie, and it's crazy to think that she, her career in the last like span of like the few decades there, because she did The Fog with Jamie Lee Curtis. She appeared in that too. That was 1980, so 18 years prior to this, and she wasn't in any movies in between those. Like, it literally, Fog, 18 years later, H2O, and I don't know when the last time she was in a movie before The Fog. So it's nice that, like, anytime she did kind of go back to work, it was always for her daughter.
Yeah. To work alongside her, that might have been certainly after like her daughter like cut her teeth and paid her dues and even proved like, I've got my own kind of like niche I've carved in the business now. Now we can kind of like just be working actresses, like working alongside each other. If I'd imagine that's kind of the dream of any performer. If your child wants to pursue the same field that you're in, the dream is that they'll be successful enough that you can work alongside each other at some point. It is nice to see that. So I'm glad that I can appreciate that now in a way that I because in the theater I was like, what was that? That was nothing. What are you doing to me? There's so many possibilities here that aren't being explored. But
Anyway,
2020 hindsight is 2020. So
I'm sure that there's so many things that we could talk about with this movie. Like, I feel like I have more, but I don't want this to go on so long for our editor. So let's get to the cherry picker.
It's not like we kill people on purpose.
So we got to pick a cherry on top. I'm gonna give it to the sassy waiter. No, this is pretty obvious. It's gonna be it's Laurie. You okay there?
I would have been okay with either one, honestly. Like, we would have been the only podcast to put that guy on the pedestal.
Sassy waiter.
It's I agree. I got a lot out of Laurie's portrayal and Jamie Lee Curtis's investment. So I will happily endorse.
Absolutely. Okay, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. So now, last week we asked you who deserves to die the most in Sleepaway Camp. I nominated Mel Caustic. You nominated Artie the Cook. This was a bit of a landslide across Patreon, Instagram, and YouTube. The vote came to 141 for Mel versus 746 for Artie.
Thanks, guys. Oh my gosh.
All right.
Yeah, you share my repulsion.
Jaboni66. I could spend the next few minutes twisting my thoughts and knots to avoid feeling gross for keeping one of these predators alive. So instead, I'll just say, thanks, guys, for a hilarious podcast. I crack up every time I hear Eddie burst out laughing.
Oh, every time? I hope not. God, that's a lot.
Yeah. Amethyst Frost.
It just happened again.
Secretly,
Yes.
I think Aunt Martha should have been the first character to win Cherry on Top and Cherry Picker in the same episode, but I love these choices because they're basically the same character, only one is murdered and the other is scalded but survives. In other words, we're voting for Eat Shit and Die, Mel, or Eat Shit and Live, Artie, as these two quotes sum up these characters. I hate Artie more though, so I vote him.
Right.
Yeah. And it's
Concur.
a rule that you cannot be the cherry on top and the cherry picker in the same episode. Just for anyone who didn't know that. Nate 1066 Pollock, the psychotic aunt, of course. No one deserves to die more than in that movie than her. Huh? I guess not everyone.
Then a sexual predator? I mean, she's kind of a sexual predator all on her own, but in a
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
I was
I don't
kind
know.
of,
I don't know.
you know what I was getting from her? Like just, we didn't mention it, but just like in retrospect afterwards, she's kind of like, do you know how like at Disney parks, the all like the actors, you know, have to play these characters? Cause she's like, I wonder. And it's just like, oh, she's like doing the Snow White thing. Cause if you like look at that, they're just like, and she's even like, she's kind of got a Snow White appearance to her too. So I'm just like, is that what she is? Is she just like, maybe she has this like princess syndrome where she's just like, you know, living in this fairy tale world and completely delusional.
Or maybe you're also getting like a Snow White essence because she's mixing primaries during daylight hours, which is with very, very pale skin and very, very dark hair.
Yeah. Very.
She does, you know, the same color story as Snow White.
Snow White,
you know, like a beret wearing librarian kind of thing. Even though she's a doctor. Even though she is a doctor. Anyway.
Grant Dempsey, Artie, bring in your favorite cannibal to finish cooking him and serve him along with the corn for a nice hearty meal for everyone. That's dark.
What? What?
Hamish.
I got lost in that. All right.
Artie, because he was a child predator and is someone I can picture on Chris Hansen's To Catch a Predator. P.S. I actually love this podcast, as I have probably mentioned before, and can't wait for you guys to do more Friday the 13th pods. Well,
Next Friday the 13th, maybe.
We got, speaking of part 3, when October, spoiler alert, Anderson Fraser. It has to be Artie for me. Glad that his fate was far worse than death. Living with all those burns was surely painful.
Screaming for hours? Yeah. Unabated? Yeah.
Silent Saturn. This might be the toughest one yet, since Artie will probably win this. I cast my vote to Mel. How can he run the place and let scum like Artie, who makes zero attempts at hiding who he is, work there? Then again, he isn't treating the kids much better, but with his constant physical abuse, I hate to think how many children suffered under those guys' hands until Angela came along. Absolutely disgusting. And that's thank you for furthering my point, because technically Mel enabled Artie to do what he did.
Mel held the door open for Artie, to walk right through it.
Yeah. Mendejo, I know Martha is going to be an obvious one people would pick, but I find her way too fascinating to kill her. Why it simply wouldn't do at all.
Thank
and
you.
That's why we didn't nominate her.
Yeah, if you're too entertaining, I can't kill you.
Parantha. I'll add Aunt Martha as a third option. The implication is that she psychologically abused Peter Angela, who was mostly depicted as cisgender, excluding the canon established in the sequels. Then again, Aunt Martha was also clearly nuts and probably should have had the kids taken away from her custody, so I guess the blame could also be placed on the state, and assuming the film took place in the real world, Reagan would have been president, and by 1983, the year of the film's release, would have already ordered the drastic defunding of government-assisted mental health facilities and child services, so Reagan is a viable fourth option. We're going to take it all the way to the top!
All right, kill the system!
Oh, and then they add, love the podcast, guys. I look forward to the new eps each week. If y'all don't mind, I'm going to link the donation funds for the ongoing SAG, AFTRA, and WGA strike to help the workers as they strike. By all
Very
means,
nice.
go ahead. Yes, because
awesome.
we support SAG, AFTRA, and the WGA here on the Cherry Picker as well.
Yeah. Without them, there'd be nothing to review on this pod.
No. Yeah, basically. Dylan Jameson, since the audience actually sees Mel die in the movie, he does not get my vote. My vote goes for Artie, as the last time the audience sees him, he's still moving, so he definitely should die, and painfully. Nooble, Nooble, there's a lot of O's in there. I haven't seen the movie in such a long time, but I'm going to go with Artie. My chunky Geordie, Artie. He was such a creep and deserved more than a scalding. He should have been boiled alive. Danielle, it's so hard because I want to pick both. Basilisk, I'm upset I have to let Mel go because he was also really gross. And then Emperantha again says, there are actually very few likable characters in this film. I'm not saying that they all should be candidates to be killed off since they were kids/young adults, but good Lord, they were dicks. All right,
hilarious.
now I turn it over to you, Edward. You get
all
first
right.
dibs.
Well, okay. I kind of buried the lead with this one because I didn't really chime in with a lot of what he did because, I don't know, I didn't want to show my hand in case I couldn't choose him. But I have a serious problem with Will, even though he was my line. Well, that's sucky.
Well, that's
even though I love
sucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love Adam Arkin so much as an actor. And he has some funny moments, like I guess funny. I don't know. I still don't know what to make of his exchange with the girls when he's talking about getting his nipples pierced and everything like that. It's again, I get that kind of sense that he is trying to kind of play the, like, I'm a cool teacher, like, you don't have to pretend with me, like, you know, we joke about stuff like this and, you know, things that ordinary teachers are too uptight to joke about. And I'm like, dude, you are so lame. I thought it then, I think it now. Especially because you're just gonna go get wasted, you know, and get laid with your school mistress. But also just the fact that, like, he's the one when Ronnie comes over to the door and tells them that, like, you know, all this shit's going down and everything, and Laurie starts getting all, you know, hot and bothered and everything, and he says, no, there's no reason to get upset yet, let's just calm down. And because I know what's coming, I'm like, fucker, because in not, I don't know how many minutes, 15, 20 minutes, he is going to be holding a gun, see a silhouette approaching, assume it's Michael Myers.
Technically it was.
Technically it was, but it was a mirage, like Laurie saw in the reflection of the Bible store when she, or whatever she was looking in when she was
They
in
were like
town.
little tchotchkes or something.
Yeah, tchotchkes or bottles of wine. I don't know, but
Just looking longingly
anyway.
at alcohol again, yeah.
yeah, that'd be hilarious. Anyway, so Will is there. He shoots at someone he has not yet made out clearly, and takes down an innocent man, and an innocent man we really like. I really like Ronnie. And I remember even then just being like, oh, you fucking idiot. He's like, and I was really happy that Will got almost instantly killed after that by Michael, and that he got killed in an iconic way, because Halloween 2 with the nurse with their shoes falling off her feet and everything like that. I don't remember. Did Will's shoes fall off his feet?
No.
I don't think so.
But he got
That's
like
a
blood out of the, like Michael like stuck the knife in there and was just like shaking it around.
Right.
Yeah. And he was
So it
he was like
a little more graphic.
Yeah.
Just a little more graphic, yeah. But anyway, so at least he got killed. But this is the thing. Later on in the movie, as relieved as I am to find out that Ronnie survived, like, he's running out there going like, hey, I'm fine, the bullet just grazed me. I'm like, okay, so thank God that Will is such a terrible shot because he didn't take you out. But if he had been right and that had been Michael Myers, he would have just grazed Michael Myers. They would have rushed over to like inspect if he's dead, or at least he would have, and he probably would have pulled a Halloween 2 with that cop turning back and going like, "What are you talking about? I can't tell if he's breathing." Well, and everything, and he would have gotten killed.
Breathing.
Oh, he's a piece of shit. Yeah. I just think Will is the least, and also I don't like the way he received like Laurie's story. I was like, Laurie, he don't deserve you, girl. Like, I know it's
like after saying like at the restaurant, like, I'm a really good listener. Like he basically goaded it out of her, and when she finally was ready to,
he needs a drink.
Tell him, his response is like, wow, that's sucky. Yes. So.
Yeah, and now I need a drink. So it's like I don't know. I
mean, that was
I
for
love
her,
Adam Arkin,
though.
but I don't love Will.
Also, we
love Will.
forgot to mention when they the fucking jump scares in this movie are annoying.
Oh God!
But when Ronnie comes to the door and she has the gun and she's pointing at him, Laurie like fully like leaves the gun. She's still holding it up to Ronnie for like a full 5 seconds. And she's just like, oh my God! It's just like, put that shit down. Like this is how people get killed, as we find out. And also just the fact that and this is more of a case against Laurie, but just how she's like, we're gonna split up. We're going this way. You, the one black guy in the movie, you go off on your own and try to get the phones fixed. Like late 90s horror was not. I mean, they obviously they rescued him in the end, but they were not kind to black people at all.
No.
So, well, it'll be interesting when we get to Resurrection. But
I'm gonna I just want to close the book. So,
I'm gonna.
Okay, fine.
What? I'm gonna make my nomination. What did you want to say?
Make your nomination. I don't remember anymore. Make your nomination.
I'm gonna nominate. As much as I would love to nominate the mother or the daughter, I don't think that the context would translate into the actual cherry picker poll as to why they're more deserving to die, and I can only pick one of them, and it just like it's a Sophie's choice. Which one do you pick? I'm gonna pick Michael Myers because he was supposed to die in this movie. He was supposed to get his head chopped off. And even though, that whatever way you want to look at this, whether it was him or not, I think the fact of it being him, it kind of gives catharsis to Laurie and, puts a cap on everything from the first movie to the end. And if we are looking at it through the lens of Resurrection, just the fact that, this poor paramedic got dragged into all this, and the only thing I could think of is like maybe his name was Michael, and that's why he responded when she said Michael. But I say Michael because that should have been him who got his head chopped off at the end, and then they could have still. I mean, we didn't need Resurrection, and they still could have done the Rob Zombie remakes several years later. It wouldn't have changed anything. So. All that's keeping him alive serves us is giving us Halloween Resurrection. So I'm picking Michael Myers.
All right.
Yeah. So vote your heart, vote your conscience. We will have the poll up on Instagram, YouTube, and Patreon. If you are supporting on Patreon, which is my Patreon, Zach Cherry, you will get early access to all of our episodes. If you're supporting on the Freddy Krueger tier, you'll also get access to our bonus episode every month, the Cherry Picker After Dark, where this past month we had Scream Survivor 3. The third one, what is the tagline? Like the last one's always the best. The last Scream Survivor is always the best. And it really was. It was intense. So go support on Patreon. It goes a long way in helping us, and you also get extra and early content out of it. And I do want to welcome a new Patreon supporter at that as well. So say hello to Adrian Phillips. Hello. Welcome aboard.
Hey,
And
welcome.
I also want to thank our new editor. This is his second episode now, but thank you to Boy Cried Wolf. Clap.
Clap and howl.
Clap and howl. If you are new to the Cherry Picker, you can go subscribe to us on YouTube. The videos are there if you are listening to us. If you are watching us on YouTube, you can also listen to us. The RSS feed link is in the descriptions down below. We're on TikTok now, thanks to Boy Cried Wolf. So go follow us there. TikTok is at the Cherry Picker Pod, I believe, which is also our Instagram. Go follow us there. Follow us everywhere. Edward, where can they follow you?
You can follow me on YouTube, on Instagram, and I have to keep a list now to remind myself. Letterboxd, and now also on the TikTok. By all means, follow me on there and tell me what the hell I'm supposed to do on it. I have no clue.
I think
I'm still figuring it out.
You're allowed to just exist on there and watch things. You don't have to do anything.
Okay.
I
do that on Instagram though. So anyway, I don't understand.
Yeah,
I don't know why TikTok is different and better. Maybe.
Stop putting TikTok down when we're trying to promote our TikTok.
No. I'm not putting it down. I just don't understand it. I'm of an age where I understand that TikTok is for like the kids. I want to understand. So by all means,
we're literally like Laurie Strode and Will Brennan age of H2O. We don't know what the Mollies and the Johns are doing for their social media.
We need like Josh Hartnett and Michelle Williams to kind of like, and Little Man Tate. We didn't talk much about Charlie, but him. We need all y'all to let us know what's what.
And you can find me on YouTube. Main page is Zach Cherry, ZACK. I'm also on Instagram at Retro Bitchface, Letterboxd Zach Cherry, Twitter Zach Cherry 8, all that fun stuff. Go look for us there. Edward, do you know what's going on next week? I don't think I told you, so.
No, you didn't.
Yeah,
so
we're doing.
But is it the one?
Stop.
Where
we're doing Cujo. So some more Stephen King for you. Anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and we will be right